came into finance about 12 years ago now. You know, I started out as everybody else back in the 80s, got my first mortgage, $105,000, doesn't sound a lot, but when you add an interest rate to it of 17%, it's quite a lot to take in as a young 24-year-old. I couldn't understand why I was working so hard and getting nowhere with my mortgage, so I wanted to know more about it, understand finance, so that was my step into the finance world.
My knowledge before meeting Paul would have been go to a bank, give them all your information, try and save up, 25% and be in debt for 30 years and pay a massive amount of interest and help the banks, I think.
When I was introduced into the mortgage arena, I discovered something about compound interest. Compound interest is front-end loaded, and there was nothing out there to show people how to beat compound interest.
I learned a lot from Paul. Paul made me realise that 30 years is not the way it has to be, that there are other alternatives, and that massive amount of interest that the bank would have taken from me is not necessarily the way it has to be either. Yeah, there are alternatives.
So I come up with a product called Mortgage Debt Diet, and what Mortgage Debt Diet does is it does teach people how to beat compound interest. It shows you how that compound interest works for you more so than the bank. The compound interest is the component which capitalises on the amount of money you borrow over a certain term, usually about 30 years, and that's where the banks make their profit. So the banks make their profit based on compound interest, and that profit is usually generated in the third term of your mortgage. So if you have a 30-year loan, in the first 10 years of your mortgage, the bank will make 60 to 70% of their profit.
I thought 30 years was the normal length of time, and yeah, I'm very surprised when I met Paul and he said, 6 years.
The way I look at Mortgage Debt Diet, in the same analogy as finance, is that if you want to get rid of weight, you have to follow a system. Debt is absolutely no different. In order to get rid of debt, you've got to go on a diet. You have to budget, that's your diet. And you have to be disciplined, you have to stick to it. The thing about the two also is with losing weight, if you're going to lose a certain amount of weight in a certain amount of time, and you go and have a piece of chocolate cake in the middle of it, it's going to take you longer to lose the weight. Debt works no differently. If you're going to lose a certain amount of debt in a certain amount of time, and then you go and buy some flashy car in the middle of it, it's going to take you longer to lose it. It's all about the compound interest working in your favour and not the banks. I'm all about you having all the profit, rather than giving it to those guys that's making $8 billion each a year. So if you're skeptical about it, ask the bank. How are they making such record profits?
I think the mortgage debt diet is something you definitely have to look into if you want to purchase a home and pay it off in 6 years. It is something everybody should look at.